On this episode, we meet the executive director of Walk San Francisco. Then we talk with a traffic engineer for the city. Across the bay, a professor at Berkeley discusses urban design. A grassroots group in Boston wants to save the old Northern Avenue Bridge. Finally, we take a look at the pedestrian transportation plan for Madison, Wisconsin. Stay tuned. We're in San Francisco talking with Betsy Thagard, who's executive director of Walk San Francisco. What is Walk San Francisco?
Walk San Francisco is a pedestrian advocacy group. We try and get the city to make the city streets safer and more pleasant for people who walk.
Historically, what has it been like for pedestrians in San Francisco?
Well, San Francisco is a very dense, small city, actually, and it was designed for walking. It's got a very easy street grid, and it's only 49 square miles. In the turn of the century, walking was actually the great thing that people did on their day off. On Sunday, thousands of people would stroll up and down their main street here, Market Street, to see the sights, to see each other. So it's always been a great walking city. Unfortunately, though, in the past 50 years, city policies have been mostly to facilitate the movement of automobiles, and that has made it a less safe and a less pleasant place to walk in general.
How did Walk San Francisco get started?
Well, there were a lot of people who were very concerned about the degraded pedestrian environment here, feeling like it was much less safe and much more unpleasant to be a walker. And we had the grim luck, actually, to organize a couple of months before the city announced that the pedestrian fatality rate doubled last year. And that really caused a lot of outrage within the city. And so we've had a considerable success in the year that we've been here. We've had a lot of demonstrations where we go and we have a memorial for the person who's been killed. We had a memorial on the steps of City Hall here a couple of months ago for a baby that was actually killed in his stroller. His mother was wheeling him across the street in a crosswalk, and a car just turned right into him without ever looking. And that enabled us to get some significant money. It was during the budget process, some significant money for a pedestrian program. So we feel like we have achieved some things over the last few months.
What are the main issues you're working on?
Well, we're really trying to change city policies. We're trying to get positions in place, a person at the city who's in charge of observing the pedestrian environment, and making sure that it's designed to be more safe, and watching projects. I mean, the way this pedestrian environment gets degraded is just a little change here and a little change there, and we cut that sidewalk a bit and we make that intersection a little bit worse so that cars can go through it more quickly. And after a while, you have a very unpleasant city. And so we really need someone on the staff of the Department of Parking and Traffic who makes it their business to look at projects and say, no, this part of that project will make the environment worse for pedestrians. And in fact, we could make this improvement so that more people will want to walk here instead.
Have you been working with other groups in the city?
Yes, we work with the transit advocacy group Rescue Muni, and we work with the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition, because we really see that those three forms of transportation as what a city should really be all about. There's just not enough room in a big, dense city for everyone to get where they need to go by automobile. And instead of trying to make it easier for people to go by automobile, which will never really work, the city should be working on improving the transit system, making it easier to bicycle and easier to walk. And the three groups recognize that and all work together on various issues.
We're talking with Joran Kroll, who's an assistant transportation engineer with the Department of Parking and Traffic for the city and county of San Francisco. What is the importance of pedestrians to the city?
Well, everyone is a pedestrian. If you are using an automobile or public transportation or even a bicyclist, ultimately at one point or another you're becoming a pedestrian. So from that point of view, being a pedestrian and using traffic on foot is the most important way of getting around, the most important way of transportation. And much emphasis has been given to the automobile, to a lesser degree to public transportation, and recently the San Francisco has also emphasized the need for improved bicycling bicycle facilities. But I feel that much more can be done in terms of accommodating the pedestrian.
And currently, pedestrian issues, pedestrian facilities, how are they addressed?
Well, the city is working already on pedestrian issues in many ways, but they are developed and implemented within one of the many different city departments. The Department of Parking and Traffic, for which I work, is one of many departments. Then we have the Department of Public Works, the Municipal Railway, which is the transit agency, and the Planning Department. Maybe these are the most important departments working on issues relating to pedestrian improvements. But then there are a host of other departments working in one way or another on pedestrian issues. So we are already doing a lot as far as the city is concerned, but there is no concerted, no joint effort in pulling all these different measures and efforts together. Furthermore, rather than reacting to problems popping up here and there and reacting to citizens' concerns and citizens who are calling in for improvement, a pedestrian program would provide a long-range vision what the city would be like for the benefit of pedestrians, for the long range, and of course also work on short-range transportation issues facing pedestrians. So right now the city is working already on pedestrian issues, but improvements could be made to better coordinate all these efforts. And furthermore, what I feel is San Francisco needs a pedestrian vision, a pedestrian plan, within which each particular effort has its integrated place.
And a formal pedestrian program, I suppose, could take many different forms. How do you see it possibly being put into effect here in San Francisco?
I think that our department, the Department of Parking and Traffic, is probably the most logical place to have a pedestrian program, because we already work on traffic engineering and traffic management matters, and within which the pedestrian program would fit in nicely. Theoretically, it could be in any other department which already works on pedestrian issues. But we have the striping diagrams, the traffic signal inventory, the traffic signal timing. All of these are very important to pedestrian safety. And a lot of our staff is already very interested in pedestrian issues, so I feel this is a congenial place to having a pedestrian program in San Francisco. Our executive director, Stuart Sunshine, is very interested in the program, but I should emphasize that as of this point, our commission has not yet endorsed the program. I have a briefing on August 17, during which I will brief our commission on our proposal, and I'm sure we will get a very good response from them and very much support. So the pedestrian program could be structured similar to other programs which we already have. We have a transit preferential streets program, in which we look at making transit vehicles progress faster and more efficiently through city streets and bringing transit users faster to their destinations and also in a safer manner. We work very closely with the municipal railway, the transit agencies of the city. A few years ago, we established a bicycle program, which has been very successful, also located here in our Department of Parking and Traffic. And these are models after which the bicycle program could be modeled.
We're in Berkeley, California, talking with Professor Michael Southworth with the University of California. What department are you with?
I'm in two departments, actually, Department of City and Regional Planning and the Department of Landscape Architecture.
And What sort of connection is there between those two fields that you'd be in both departments?
Well, actually, my specialty is urban design, which is an interdisciplinary field, combines planning, landscape architecture, even architecture. I'm an architect too. So it makes sense really to have appointments bridging departments.
What sort of changes have there been in urban design over the course of this last century?
Huge changes. We've gone from very compact cities laid out generally in grid patterns with lots of public space down to the post-war suburbs, which are often called suburban sprawl, lots of cul-de-sacs, lots of loops, lots of disconnectedness, lots of separated land uses, and they're really auto-dependent. Our old cities were very pedestrian-friendly. Our new emerging landscapes are pedestrian unfriendly, almost totally automobile dependent.
What can be done to change that? I mean, were there little things that could be done to improve the situation, or do we have to do big things?
Oh, there's certainly lots of little things, and there are lots of big things. It really requires, I think, citizen involvement in the planning process, because people usually like walkability, bicycleability. It requires the professions of planning, development, architecture, urban design to create, I think, new models for creating new residential areas, shopping centers, and so on, getting away from the single-use post-war suburb. And your grid street system versus your cul-de-sac street system, just how does that affect a pedestrian? Well, it has really enormous impacts. The old grid cities that we see across the country, neighborhoods and whole towns dating from the 19th century, even the early 20th century, had very well connected street grids, lots of intersections, lots of streets. So you have a lot of choices of places to go. And these streets were invariably made with sidewalks on both sides of the streets, and usually trees on both sides of the streets. It was just the standard way of doing things. So that as a pedestrian or bicyclist, you had a very interesting walk, a pleasant walk, a shaded walk that could take you through the town in lots of different ways. As we move to the post-war city where the automobile is taking over, streets tend to get wider, and there are a lot of sacrifices in this process of widening streets. One is sidewalks get narrower, and often they disappear completely. You get a lot of blacktop, and in the more recent suburbs, we see that trees are disappearing because they're expensive, because nobody wants to maintain them. So the old tree-lined streets very often are absent. We get hot, barren streets of asphalt. At the same time, the land use pattern is getting very, very coarse. Instead of mixed uses with corner stores, churches, schools, all in a tight space, we tend to get single-use developments where you have cookie-cutter houses, acre after acre, mile after mile, and to get to the movie theater, to recreation, to shopping, you have to drive. So if you're a pedestrian or bicyclist, often you're stuck.
And you've taken a look at how children are affected by land use patterns. What did you see?
Well, I think if children are happy in a neighborhood, everyone else will be. So it's fascinating, I think, to study the lives of children and how they use urban space, how they think of it, what is important to them in the neighborhood. My theory is we need to design neighborhoods and cities for kids. They're obviously very influenced by the environment they grow up in, and if they have a very damaging kind of physical environment, it's going to affect the kind of people they become. So we find when we look at children's experience in neighborhoods, access is really important. At the age of about 10 or 12, they begin to want to do things on their own. They don't always want to be taken around in the car to get to the soccer field, to get to the movie theater, to get to the park or whatever. So neighborhoods that have walkability, bicycleability are really the most appealing places to kids and serve kids the best.
We're in Boston talking with Paul Farrell with a group called Save the Old Northern Ave Bridge. what's the bridge and what's the group?
The bridge is a 1909 swing bridge that allowed sugar ships to go up the Fort Point Channel here to a refinery. And it was built in 1909. It's iron construction. It pivots in the middle, swings around, it has two fixed ends. And it's now been replaced for vehicles by a new highway bridge to the side of it. So it's presently not used, only used for pedestrians, and the middle of it is blocked off, and the city has a plan to tear it down since they think it's not needed anymore. But in the meantime, since it's been here and it's been used by pedestrians, people have gotten to like it and expect that it's going to stay. So our group is formed to try and pressure the city to not tear it down, although there's currently a plan, proposal to tear it down that the city's accepted, but we haven't stopped fighting, and we think it's a reasonable enough idea to save it, and there's enough benefit and enough public interest that we think will prevail, or we'll put up a good fight anyway until, if they do tear it down.
Now, what benefits does a bridge like this have for pedestrians?
Well, if you compare it to the new highway bridge, which is 6 lanes wide and built to the federal highway standards, and it could be out in the middle of nowhere with 18-wheelers going 65 miles an hour across it, and it just has no character and no interest. And this bridge was built back in a time when structurally you had to kind of outsmart the loads instead of just pouring on more concrete. So it has a lot of interesting construction to it that you actually walk right through. It's like I see it as a sculpture that you can walk inside, and then it's even a sculpture that turns, because it still does pivot and occasionally opens now. And it just adds a lot of interest and character to the city. It's a lot of fun to walk through, and you see the changing perspective of the columns and the beams going by and the diagonals. It's just enjoyable, and it's also, because it was built to carry 4 lanes of traffic and 2 railroad lines, it's 80 feet wide, and the pedestrians were just squeezed off to the edge, which they still are now because there's doing some construction in the middle. But so it's a really wide bridge. It doesn't have any more vehicular use, so you think of it as 80-foot wide pedestrian way where you can kind of walk freely right down the streets where you'd expect a truck to be coming to run you over, and it's just a real pleasant sensation to feel like you've got the road to yourself. And it's also right out on the harbor. It has a really beautiful view of the harbor, and you can kind of use it as a place to cross, and it's this little relief from the city where you see out to the water, or you can stop on it and just relax and lean up against the column at the rail and enjoy the city.
How'd the group get started, and who belongs to it?
Well, I think actually I just ran into somebody who was a planner in the city who I'd seen speak, and I said, I heard you speak and I enjoyed what you said about the city, but do you know anything about the Northern Avenue Bridge? And she said, I was just at a meeting at City Hall, and they said they're going to tear it down, and she was just outraged, and I just from there just started to call people. wasn't a member of any organization then, and I started to call people and got a group together and just connected up with a lot of other people that have either been interested in bridges or the group here, Walk Boston, which has been interested in pedestrian issues, and kind of built up a little network and put our group together, and we've just spent a lot of time handing out postcards to people with pictures of the bridge, which they send to the mayor and write a message on and send in to the mayor, and they've gotten about 1,000 postcards. It's so easy to get people to say yes to this, to saving this bridge, that unfortunately the mayor's still not able to say yes, or won't, but we're still working on that. But it's individuals that just got together, and I think we haven't succeeded yet, but I think we've gotten a lot of attention, and people definitely know about the issue and know that it's possible to save it. And I think it's a sign that anybody can really just start out and with an idea that something's worth saving or worth not throwing away, and kind of work on it and get some attention to the issue.
We're in Madison, Wisconsin, talking with Arthur Ross, who's the pedestrian bicycle coordinator.
Hi, John.
Not too long ago, Madison did a pedestrian transportation plan. What was the inspiration behind doing that?
Well, Madison has had a bicycle pedestrian plan in place since the early to mid-1970s. With ICE-T and the enhancement monies coming available, we decided it was time we needed a pedestrian transportation plan as well as part of the ICE-T requirements that there be pedestrian and bicycle components of the transportation plan. We felt that developing a full-blown pedestrian transportation plan was in the city's best interest.
And iced tea is not a beverage. What is it?
It's not a beverage. Good point, John. It was the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act. It is now been reauthorized with a new acronym, T21, which is, I believe, the Transportation Efficiency Act for the 21st century.
Okay, and so you say there's requirements from these pieces of federal legislation. What were those requirements?
Yeah. Well, the requirements were basically that any area that is a metropolitan planning area, essentially any area of over 50,000 population, has always had to have a transportation plan. The new requirement was that there had to be pedestrian and bicycle components to that metropolitan planning area's plans.
So all these decades, no one was required to do any planning for pedestrians.
Not required to. Madison has always had a strong multimodal emphasis in their transportation plans, but this provided us with an opportunity to develop a much more thoroughly thought out plan for pedestrian transportation for the city.
What goes into a plan like that? What would someone reading it find?
Well, somebody reading it we'll find a lot of things in our plan. We did, if I can just pull it over here and give you a couple of ideas of what's in here. We went through a couple of introductory chapters which kind of laid out the rationale for why we needed a plan. We have a chapter in here called Thinking Like a Pedestrian, to give people a little bit of background on what it needs, what it means to be a pedestrian, and in that plan we've used a lot of graphics, asking questions such as, can I walk there? You know, what are the things that are important for pedestrians? You need to be able to walk someplace. Are there sidewalks? Is there a continuous pedestrian network? How does the pedestrian network and transit link together? Is walking convenient? Do we have destinations to walk to? So the tie-in between transportation issues and land use issues. One of our we created a vision for the pedestrian plan, and in that process, one of the things we came up with was that an 8-year-old child should be able to walk to the store to buy a gallon of milk. It was one of the visions that we have for the city of Madison. Convenience is also being able to cross streets. You know, sidewalks allow us to walk along streets. Most of the complaints that we get from people on pedestrian issues in Madison has to do with the difficulty of getting across streets. Is walking safe? And in terms of safety, we're talking about issues like curb ramps for people who use wheelchairs, or for people pushing baby strollers, or using other wheeled implements, safety in terms of street crossings as well, the conditions of sidewalks and things like that. And finally, is walking enjoyable? It shouldn't be stressful. It should be something that reduces stress, that is fun to do. So, you know, are the sidewalks right up against the curb, and you've got, fast-moving traffic beside you, or, are there terraces, are there trees? What's the environment within which you're walking? So to kind of set the stage for why it is that we're doing the plan. Then we get into a lot of current issues, and out of that, recommended policies and practices.
And what were some of the recommended practices, or what sort of practices were you recommending?
Well, lots. There's a whole, gosh, how many recommendations do we have in here? The executive summary lists everything. We've got almost 100 recommendations within the plan. A lot of the recommendations are, fortunately, to continue things that we've been doing and that we've been doing well, and want to make sure that we continue doing well. some of the things that we've been doing, like these in-street yield to pedestrian signs, comes out of the recommendations for increasing the safety and convenience of being able to get across streets. And so that experiment really derives from the plan. And having the plan really helps move things along. We have zoning ordinances existing that require sidewalks in all new developments. Yet the developers often come in and ask for exceptions, to those requirements, and oftentimes they're granted. Since the plan has been developed, though, and for people who are thinking about developing plans for their own communities, something that's really important to do is to get buy-in from people who are going to have to be helping to implement this plan in other agencies. The plan was written in the traffic engineering division, but there's Public Works and Planning and Development. We involve Public Works in particular very heavily in this, and Public Works is the last stop on that approval process for new developments. And it's a place where in the past we'd often see the sidewalks coming out of developments, and that doesn't happen as much anymore. In fact, they're one of our strongest allies at this point in terms of maintaining the requirement for sidewalks. So in terms of developing a plan, getting that buy-in from others who are going to be implementing it is a real important aspect of getting the plan actually implemented instead of just sitting on people's shelves.
And this plan was drawn up and designed for Madison. Do you find other cities in Wisconsin doing similar things, or perhaps taking an interest in what you did here and wanting to do something in their own town?
There have been a number of communities in Wisconsin, again because of Ice-T, that have developed, like I said, Madison's had a long-standing bicycle plan, and we really have the only bicycle plan in the state before Ice-T, before 1991. Since then, virtually all of the areas in Madison that qualify as metropolitan planning areas have developed often a joint bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. So we have seen quite a bit of that going on throughout Wisconsin, and I think that's very positive.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.